to this amazing session that we have specially curated to what most creators will be very much benefited out of. So I welcome you all to this webinar titled, just a, so sorry, just a second. Yes, sorry. So this to this webinar titled "Who Really Owns the Content? IP Battles in Film, Web Series, and OTT." So this is going to be a guide on who actually owns content and who needs to have maintain the ownership of the content and maintain the records of it and things related to it. So I am Shakti, legal executive at IP Climb, and I will be acting as the moderator of this webinar as well. Before we begin our session, I would like to give a brief introduction of what we do at IP Climb. So how we help the creator community at large is through our services. So at IP Climb, we offer end-to-end legal services and IP asset management for creators and films. And that by saying that, we mean that from the development stage to exploitation, we secure, we structure, and manage IP assets, covering all rights clearances, contracts, compliance, and risk mitigation, ensuring the maximum benefit is given to the creators and their rights are secured, of course. And we also protect, control, and we have complete leverage. We completely leverage the value of the intellectual property assets. We have a set of curated tools which are specifically aimed to serve the creative community and the owners, and say the directors, the production houses at large, which can be easily had in detail at our website ipclimb.com. And we are very much active on all our social medias, on our Instagram and LinkedIn as well. So I request you all to kindly follow our Instagram and LinkedIn to get quick updates regarding our services and our updates. So we are about to launch our IP Climb mobile app as well, so it will soon get on air. So in order to get quick updates, I request you all to kindly stay tuned to our socials. So jumping right into today's session, as the entertainment ecosystem has continued to grow across films, web series, creative content, across social media platforms and OTT platforms, there is a huge question of ownership and exploitation of the creative product, exploitation of the creation that is made by different creative sources, such as a creator, a production house, or a content creator in social media platforms. So today's session aims to shed light on these particular subject matters that I just mentioned, and the commercial complexities that revolve around them by an industry expert. So IP Climb is honored to have with us Ms. Medha Banta, Senior Associate at Khurana Khurana, as our guest speaker. On behalf of IP Climb, I welcome you, ma'am, who brings
Thank you.
extensive experience in media and entertainment law. So ma'am's expertise and her industry insights are going to be extremely beneficial to all of us who are going to attend this session. So to give a small heads up, an introduction to this current session. So the current session will cover the fundamentals of media and entertainment law, copyright ownership in films and OTT content, and the legal framework revolving around it, and in relation to the creator as well as the producer rights in India. And it will also discuss about the ownership of scripts, music, lyrics, and cinematographic films. And cinematographic films, along with concepts, revolving around assignments, licensing, and work made for hire. This discussion will also explore how OTT platforms are shaping the future of content creation and how it is supposedly to be driven in order to get maximum exploitation out of it as a creator, as a producer. So with an ardent interest in exploring this huge area, which is of much needed need of the hour, I'd like to welcome Miss. Just a second, ma'am. Hi, also sorry for the small interruption. It's a technical
No
thing.
problem.
Yes, so inviting Medha Banta ma'am was the right decision for this, since the moment that we decided to have a webinar, have a session which will talk about the exploitation and the ownership of digital assets, we had Medha Banta ma'am on our mind. So Medha ma'am heads the media and entertainment practice at Khurana Khurana. She's a media and entertainment lawyer with extensive experience in the industry, handling clients across films, music, musical ownership, digital content industries, and Ms. Medha primarily focuses on transactional, operational, and advisory work. She has also represented artists, production houses, music labels, brands, and digital platforms in complex commercial agreements, through which and because of which we were able to identify ma'am as the right fit for the current topic. So her practice
Thank you.
involves structuring and negotiating high value agreements relating to film production, OTT content, music rights, talent engagement, and artist representation, as I previously said. So we are honored to have you, ma'am. Thank you so much for having graciously accepted our invitation and
Thank you.
in your valuable presence in this webinar, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I will quickly share my screen. I hope everybody can see it.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
I'll just start. Yeah. Okay. I hope this is fine. I hope you're able to see. So I'll, without taking much of your time, I think Shakti has already introduced the session very correctly, very briefly, and given you a gist about what we're going to be talking about today. So I understand that there have been a couple of sessions prior to this, which were a little more introductory in nature. So we thought of talking about a specific issue in the industry, which is intellectual property. I think as an industry, we're nothing if not very, very strongly inclined towards a discussion on IP, because most of our agreements, our drafts, our understanding, the transfer of money, the transfer of power, the whole discussion, it is always and always about something plus IP. So it is naturally important that we understand where your rights as a writer, as a director, as a producer, or any person in the industry, where do your rights lie within the media entertainment sphere. So first of all, why this session matters, because of the rapid expansion of all these OTTs. We understand that India wants a very theater-based entertainment viewership in India has now kind of slowly been making a transition. We're going from being old school theater viewers to being somewhat at a point where we may not necessarily visit a conventional theater, rather prefer to watch a film on OTT platforms. So what this has done in terms of ownership and IP is that when once upon a time, how you could you were only giving your film out for distribution to a distribution partner, you are now also you also have the opportunity to give your film for distribution or give it all together in terms of rights to an OTT platform to further display the said film there. Now, how this kind of acts both to the benefit and detriment of a producer is that theaters make big sales. When we are seeing the sales of a film and understanding how well a film is doing, whether or not we are visiting a theater to watch the said film, we're going by numbers. Naturally, they are deceiving in nature because understanding that a film has entered 100 crore club does not necessarily mean that the producer has made 100 crores out of the film, but that kind of, it kind of plays with the psyche of the audience in understanding whether or not they should be watching the said film. But with OTT coming up, there are a film that may not have done very well in theaters is gaining exceptional audience acceptance on online platforms. So in this whole transaction, where previously rights such as IP were not necessarily sold or assigned or transferred to one, but were merely licensed for such use, such as theatrical distribution and performance. Now we're talking about a deeper issue, which is that if you are giving your film to another platform, or if as a writer you're giving your script to another person, what are the various persons or what are the various entities through which it goes, and in which part in this process have you lost your right if you have? how to retain it, how to maintain it, and if nothing else, how to monetize it. Now, with this change in structure, how we're moving from the conventional theaters to preferring OTT, preferring to sit at the comfort of our home and watching films, also creates a rise in the disputes that relate to copyright ownerships. A film that was once made by a production house is now no longer necessarily retained as an IP by the said production house. They may just give all IP away in an OTT deal. Over here again, as a writer or as a producer, which part and when exactly is your right being assigned? Are you not understanding that this language or this word means that I've given away my right? I'm, still under the impression that I took a certain amount of money and I took it for a certain time, and once this is done, I get back my film. How exactly all of this plays? So we're going to understand what IP is in context of film. Within a film, what are the various kind of intellectual property rights? While people say mera IP chala gaya ya IP dena hai, you need to understand as a player in the industry, who are you and what right exactly do you have? In fact, more important to understand, as someone, do you participating in a film or in a much larger project, do you even have a right to begin with? It happens very often that we're fighting for a right that we do not have to begin with. So it is important to understand that, is your battle even worth initiating? So we'll start with the basic understanding of what is media entertainment law. Now, media entertainment law, if you're going by just the various legislations that we have, you will not find an act called the media entertainment laws. It is because essentially media entertainment is an intersection between intellectual property, contract law, and now with the change in technology, also technology law. So when we're dealing with media and entertainment laws, we're talking a lot about copyright. We're talking about contract acts because all our agreements are governed by the various values of the contract act. And now because of digital distribution and OTT is actually being governed by a completely separate act. IT Act has also come down to play a very, very crucial role in terms of what we do and how our mainstream content is actually viewed by authorities. Very funnily, and I think a lot of you being industry players actually know that when you're going for a theatrical release of a film, right, you are going to the censor board, you are therefore governed by the Cinematographic Act. Versus when a film is now being put up on an OTT, the exact same film, it has a few extended scene, uncut scenes, and it is now governed by a completely different act. The minute the film changes the medium in which it is being displayed or produced before audience, the way the act, the law that applies to your film changes. Which is why if you see the content that is available for consumption in theaters is a toned down version of what you will see in the OTTs. Reason being the different acts that govern them. The Cinematographic Act is a bit more strict. It's actually an act that has been over and over years and years. It has been kind of modified, molded, reformed into being an act that kind of preserves what an audience sitting in a theater see. Versus OTT platforms, by the virtue of the fact that they are internet enabled, they are working on the basis of internet, simply attract the IT Act, the Information Technology Act, which is in itself a rather new act. The appearance of OTT culture in India is rather new. So the act is still, and the governance, the jurisprudence around OTTs and IT acts is still something that is in the works, which is why the content available on OTT is bolder than what you would see in cinema. Which is also why in various cases, a film that may have been 2.5 hours running time in theaters is now 3 hours in OTT because they've been given the privilege of putting the uncut scenes. Uncut because IT Act could not cut them and Cinematographic Act did. So essentially, media entertainment law, as I have told you, is a combination of IP, intellectual property laws, most prominently copyright and trademark law, Contract law, the principles of which generally govern all your agreements. And thirdly, the Technology Act, which I explained, the IT Act, basically, the technology law, which governs the OTT infrastructure in India. Media entertainment law, as we know, as being people from the industry, we understand applies across various sectors. Films and cinematographic works, of course, music and sound recordings, OTT platforms, digital and online media content. So anything and everything that is entertainment is media entertainment. Now, a little bit about, let me just minimize this. I'm sorry. Let me just minimize this from my screen. So basically, I think we've covered this in the previous slide. So we'll also talk about the Trademarks Act, another important act. So basically, simply speaking, when you're making a film, your script, yes, the entire process of recording a film, making it into a cinematographic film, the performances, the music, the lyrics, the composition, the underlying works, everything is governed by the Copyright Act. The title of your film, or perhaps a couple of very catchy and very popular dialogues and slogans, are covered by your Trademarks Act. IT Act over here comes into application the minute your film goes from being displayed in theaters to being put up on OTT. You are now making a transition from Cinematographic Act to IT Act. And then, of course, the Indian Contract Act, because all our agreements, whatever the nature of the agreement will be, are governed by the Contracts Act. Now, why contracts matter? Now, it's a very, very common practice in the industry, which is actually gradually becoming non-existent. But from the earliest time you could remember a film, it would be the most difficult task in the world to find an agreement that was signed for that film. For a film signed, say, even in the 1990s, there is hardly a chance that you will be able to find proper agreements between producers, directors, actors, singers that would in any which way just give a certainty of who owned IP or what was the nature or the transition of IP from one person to the other, how it went from from the actor to the producer, or from the co-producer to the other producer, or how the DOP gave up his rights, or how a singer or a lyricist or a composer does not know even today where is the money going that a song that he sang 20 years ago made in millions. So this is why contract matters. As an industry, initially when we started, we were quite small, as is the case with most industries. So in that time, a lot of films were made on, good relation basis, which is still happening today, but we are a bit more structured about them. So previously, what happened, and I remember from a film festival I was at, where I think Boni Kapoor was there, and there was another person I'm forgetting. But I remember asking them that, how do you go about contracts, and, how did contracts and how did the transition happen? You were there, you were in the industry. You saw it being nothing, just being a phone call away. You telling someone, okay, this is the film, do you want to do it? And they saying yes. Versus today, when about an hour ago, I may have seen a 35-page long artist agreement for somebody. So, the transition. So contracts matter, because somewhere in between making a call and hiring someone, and now coming down to 35 pages of lengthy agreements to be signed between a producer and an artist, the industry understood the importance of contracts. People lost a lot of money. People continue to lose a lot of money because contracts are the backbone of your arrangement with anybody. If you are speaking with a person, say you are a writer, you have a script with you, or you have a story with you. Even before talking to another person about it, we recommend you sign an NDA, because you don't know in this 2 weeks period between when you have spoken about your script to someone, shown it to them, pitched it to them, not signed an NDA, not had any written communication about this transaction, and perhaps your deal did not go through, and 1 year later, bam, there is a super hit film with just your script. And you're sitting there, because what happened? What happened is that there was no contract. This is why contracts are important. Contracts, in very, very simple terms, put down exactly how things will happen. They may not happen in that way. See, that is always the case. Even with a written agreement, there is 100% chance that people don't abide by it and they go ahead and violate it irrespective. But if you have a written contract in your hand, at least you have the chance of trying to get your money back, trying to fight for your right. Without a written agreement, there is no way for you to tell person B that I showed this script to you. I told this to you. And they're going to be like, when and how? There is no written proof. So whatever transactions you conduct, before you share an idea, you share a thought, you share a written document, you share a story, script, lyrics, song, anything of any nature with any person. 90% of the times they may be the ones giving you an NDA, but in that 10% that remains to be, always have a contract, because your contracts define who owns that content. As of now, as of today, if as a writer you are pitching this to someone, you are still the owner of the content, of the literary work in question. Versus perhaps once your deal is materialized and you assign your rights to them, in that case, ownership may transfer. But at least today, and until somebody makes a film on this particular script, you are the owner. And the only way for you to enforce this and to let any person you're sitting across know this is by executing an agreement. Even the shortest MOU or NDA is enough to, on a preliminary level, protect your rights. So this is why contracts matter. Because in the process of having a conversation with someone over tea and them making crores a year later and you just sitting there and watching what happened was the lack of a contract. Before we get, dive further into details of IP, we need to understand what is copyright. Now, copyright is basically a statutory right. We all have it. You have the right to be a copyright owner, and so do I. So any person who protects an original literary work, which could be your script, your screenplay, your story background, lyrics, anything that is written is literary. So a literary work, musical work, as we understand, is the composition we're talking about. Artistic work could be a drawing or anything that is artistic in nature, and cinematographic work. The entire film, when brought together, is called a cinematographic film. It is protected under the Copyright Act as a cinematographic work. So whoever produces this original work becomes the owner of copyright. That is on a very, very basic preliminary level for you to understand that if you made something original, you are a copyright owner. When you are a copyright owner, you have a couple of rights which are either economic in nature or moral in nature. Economic rights are the kind of rights you get money from. They are enforceable. You can litigate against exploitation and infringement. You can send notices against unauthorized use, whereas moral rights are more moral in nature, which are two things: your right to be credited for your work, the right against distortion of your work. So these are the two moral rights. If somebody, for example, does not give you due credit, you can at maximum go and tell them that you've forgotten to give me my credit, but you cannot legally enforce that right. Versus economic right is when you have not given somebody the right to use your copyrighted work. They any which ways went ahead and did it, and then you have the right to claim what is yours. So when your economic right is the right to reproduce, right to distribute, right to communicate to the public, right to adaptation, and any other way of monetization that you can think of. So as a copyright owner, whichever of these various categories you may fall under, you being a copyright owner means you have the right to make money from the said copyrighted content or work. You could sell your script and make money. You could sell your music and make money. You could license it to someone and make money. You could be contributing artistically to a project and make money. So there is various ways, and these are your various economic rights. Next, we'll talk about what a cinematographic film is. I think all of us being people from the industry understand what a cinematographic film is. It is a film is a cinematographic film. When you have a director come together, producer come together, singers come together, actors come together, a very large crew and cast, and a lot of people coming together, making a film is called a cinematographic film. And then what is more important for you to understand here is what exactly in a film, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to adjust my screen. Yeah, what when we break down a film. Now, see, for a layman, it is very easy and very simple to say that, I have a copyright in a film. It is perhaps the simplest sentence you will ever say. But what actually goes inside the making of a film is a much, much, much larger picture. Within the film, you have various elements which can all be broken down into hundreds of IPs, if not more, perhaps less. But there is so many components in the making of a film, each of which are independently capable of copyright protection, each of which need to be taken from the said person by the producer to become the owner of the said film. So when we're making a film, if you're working on a film project, you will many a times come across various agreements being shared by the producer, the production house, either prior in the pre-production stage or sometimes even during shooting time or whatever. But these are all intended to ensure that every person working in a film is assigning their rights in writing to the film producer to ensure that the producer becomes the ultimate owner of the film. It is after he has executed some 20, 30, 40 agreements and much more with various people working on the film does he become the owner of IP. It is a tedious process. It involves getting in touch with every person working on the film, ensuring every single person assigns their rights, and only once that assignment is facilitated can he become the owner of the film. The reason for why a producer generally wants these rights and why they take IP from everybody in the film is because at the end of the day, they want to be the one person who can actually, just a second, they want to be the one person who can actually ensure that the film is being distributed, it's licensed, it's sold, and without the said rights, they cannot do it. Now, I'm trying to look for a pen that I might have over here, but I have none. So I just simply take this small bottle. So this is a bottle of a glass color. A very simple example to make you understand. Now, perhaps Shakti owns the cap of the bottle, and somebody else from Producer Bazaar owns the ink that is inside the bottle, and a third person owns this entire body. Somebody owns the retractable cap. So there is three people who own bits and pieces of this bottle. Now I want to sell this bottle to person B. How can I do that? Now I'll have to first go to Shakti, take this right. I have to get into an agreement with him, take this right, with somebody from Producer Bazaar to take this, and then a third person to take the cap and the refill. And I have to go to each one of them, take rights from them, have them sign away their right. I will pay them money. I may pay Shakti 2 rupees, somebody 3, somebody 4, somebody 5. All in all, I've spent what, 11, 12 rupees. Now, after everybody has assigned their rights to me, I have paid them due consideration for the said assignment. Now, this is mine. Now, I could sell it for 100 rupees. I may have bought it only for 15. But until and unless I bought all elements of this particular product from everybody involved, everybody who even had the smallest right, I could not have called myself the owner of copyright in this product. This is what happens in a film. All the bits and pieces, until and unless the producer or any other person has taken the right from everybody in the film, a producer cannot necessarily call himself the first owner of copyright. And all the economic rights that we just discussed in a previous slide are available to any person only so long as they are the owner of copyright. So once the producer has taken all of this, now imagine a producer wants to sell this to Netflix. There is 50 people in the project, all of whom own IP. Now, before he's striking a deal, he's striking a couple of crores worth of deal with Netflix. Instead of just signing an agreement with them, he's going to 50 people and asking them, should I do it? Should I do it? Can I do it? Not even should, can I do it? Can I do it? Because all of them had IP that he never took from them. Now, when there is a 5 crore deal happening, a person who was entitled to 5 lakhs is saying, no, you owed me 25. A person who was entitled to 10 lakhs says, no, you told me 50. And just like that, the bits and pieces of rights that you did not take prior to facilitating or getting into any deal, and you left a bit of IP with somebody, is now costing you 50 lakhs more or 1 crore more. So which is why before a producer, or even if somebody in the audience is a first time producer and is making a film, it is important for you to understand that making a film alone may not be enough. It is essential that you take in writing the assignment of rights from everybody involved in the project, everybody that you think could have contributed to the IP, or even if you think they would not have, just take an assignment in writing, because you do not know who, when, has created an IP directly or indirectly, incidentally or intentionally, but you need all the IP with you. If you're going to pitch your film to an OTT or to any third party, to any bigger producer, you're going to want to have all these rights with you. These rights that we just spoke about are the chain of title documents. This chain that we form by taking rights from everybody in the process gives us the right to the title, which we can further monetize and commercialize. Now, coming down to another kind of copyright that exists, which is in the script or the literary work. Any person who is the owner of a literary work has the right to reproduce, right to adapt. They have the right to license or assign the rights as well. And the commercial reality here is that in most films and OTT projects, the writers, they end up assigning or exclusively licensing these rights to producers and platform in exchange of lump sum or money. Now, what happens is that perhaps you're a writer, you've pitched this to an OTT or another producer. They are saying, okay, I'll pay you 20 lakhs right now, and that's about it. I'll just buy all rights out. So you have two options. You either take the 20 now, or you enter into a separate arrangement with them. And within this arrangement, you're going to be asking for 20 now and perhaps a 10% share or a 5% share, which is most likely to be given to you from the profits of the film. Because you are the writer, you have given them the film. Naturally, there is 100 of things to do before the film goes on flow, but you may be able to give yourself a rather continuing source of income as opposed to a one-time payment. Now, this may not necessarily go through, and it is not our intention to encourage you to not facilitate deals just because you're asking for this percent and that percent. Take the deal that seems most viable to you, but yes, you have the option. You don't have to necessarily assign all rights in a film in one go. You may try, and you may then also therefore be able to achieve retention of a certain royalty or a certain share in the film profits. Another kind of literary work, musical works, talking about copyright, is musical composition. Music is a different game altogether. When we're talking about films and OTTs, that conversation in itself is extremely long, lengthy, and detailed. I will not go very much in detail for music because that calls for a different session altogether. We will have that someday. But yeah, just for your understanding, if you're a composer, you become the first owner of the copyright in the composition, which means that if you have composed a melody, that now there is one, now forget films for a second, now we're in music, right? Someone has lyrics and someone is a music producer and someone has a composition. So as a lyricist and as a composer, these are the two people apart from the music producer in a music scenario that are given, that whose authorship is identified. Unfortunately, when you're just a singer rendering your vocals, you are nothing but a performer. So there's two things. You are either the author of something or you are performing that thing. So a lyricist is an author, therefore he has copyright. A composer is an author, he also has copyright. But singer is a performer. Composer ने धुन दी, lyricist ने lyrics दिए, जो music producer है उसने पूरा गाना produce करा, put together. Now the singer comes in, he is obviously explained, taught, rehearsed. He is rendering vocals. The mere rendering of vocals alone is not enough to make you the owner of copyright. So you are a performer. There are separate societies which work with royalty around performers. Again, a topic for bigger discussion. Lyrics again being literary work. So your script, your screenplay, story, any kind of treatment that you've written, all of this is literary work. And in the musical sense, your lyrics are also literary work capable of attracting copyright. Sound recording refers to the producer. There is a lyricist who's written the song, composer who's made the dhun, the melody, and then imagine piche kaun sa what musical instruments would be put, what will be the beat, what will be the drop, what will be the backdrop, what will, if somebody has made a melody like उसमें पीछे क्या डालना है, how to put that along with musical instruments and effects and this together with the voice of the singer and singing to the lyrics, usko sabko together karna is the काम of the music producer. So music producer also therefore is the owner of copyright. Cinematographic film, as we've discussed in detail, the producer is the author. The one thing now we've talked about how copyright needs to be assigned, that goes without saying. But if you look at the film and just the film, the production house, maybe a film is coming out from Red Chillies, just by the virtue of the fact that Red Chillies has produced this film, they automatically become the first owner or the author of that film. But that does not diminish the fact that Red Chilli has also had to take agreements in writing from everybody involved in the project to be able to retain the copyright and become the first owner capable of exploiting the film. Multiple copyrights now, as we have just gone through the last few slides where we've understood the various copyrights in a film. It's got to do with your script, your screenplay, lyrics, composition, sound recording, cinematographic film as a whole. Sometimes you have a writer who's doing the writing, but also doing the dialogues. Sometimes your DOP is adding more creatively. He's also incidentally creating an IP. So all these people that are involved in a film are copyright owners who collectively assign their rights to the main person who is the producer, thereby making the producer the owner of the copyright. So I think with that, we can briefly conclude a certain segment of our discussion, which is the various IPs in a film. Now, next part is the ownership rule. Who owns copyright? Now, when we're talking about the transfer and IP going from A to B, it is important to understand who actually owns the IP. Now, very simply speaking, there is a section in the Copyright Act going by the title of section 17. This section talks about who owns IP. So basically the general rule of thumb, whenever you are also confused about who owns IP, is that whoever has facilitated the creation of a said work, at whose instance it was made or who made it. Now, when I say that a work is made at someone's instance, right, it could also mean at your own will. So जिसने भी एक particular work को बनाने के लिए who took the initiative, at whose instance it was made, is the owner of the copyright. So if, for example, and also if you are working with someone or under employment, in that case, the employee is the owner of the copyright. So I'll break this down very easily for you. Simply speak, if you are hired by a production house to work on a film, maybe you did not come up with the script on your own from the set start, but you were hired by a production house that, okay, you are a writer, we have a thing in mind, you write. So you have been hired by the work. Now, there is a difference in this instance. Number one is that you had an original script and story that you took to the production house, right? So that is one way you made that script at your own instance, at your own will, versus example B, where you were approached by a production house, hired by them to write down a script for a story they had in mind. Right? Now, the difference in these two, if anybody, I mean, we're going to have question and answers at a later stage, but if anybody wants to kind of contribute, what is the difference between you creating a script and taking it to a production house versus a production house hiring you for making of a script?
Hello, am I audible?
Hello. Yes. Hi, Jagrit.
Yeah. Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, as per my understanding, if I am hired by a production house to make a script, the initial owner, the first owner of that script is the production house. However, if
Hmm.
I on my sole basis write a script. The first owner is me, and I decide whether to sell it to a production house or like how much percentage do I sell it to them, like the ownership, the profit sharing.
Absolutely. That is absolutely correct. So basically, when I have at my own instance, at my free will, written a script, come up with a story, put it down, that literary work is my IP. Versus 99% of the times, even before I start writing a script for a production house, I will be signing a contract which will be assigning all rights in that script to them from the very beginning. It will most likely be a work for hire contract, which I am working at the instance of the producer, making this work for them on a work for hire basis. Therefore, all rights from the very first word that I would have written already belong to them. And in the first instance, when I created the script at my own free will, I am a bit of an in charge in terms of who I want to give it to, how I want to give the script, at what rate, at what percentage, what money, versus someone who hires me is already coming with a pre-decided amount of how much they're going to give me for doing the said work. So ownership works that way. When you made something at your own instance, you are firstly the owner, but you have to keep in mind a couple of things. If you were doing this at someone instance, they become the first owner. If you were doing this in the course of employment, they become the first owner. And similarly, in the case of a film, when a film is being made at the instance of the producer, it all comes down to who has paid you to do that, right? Simply speaking, who paid you to do that? Now, when you made the script and wrote it down at home, nobody paid you to do it. Versus right now, the producer paid you to do it. तो आपका उस time पे who's making sure that who's paying for that thing to happen is the IP owner, copyright owner in this case. When you create something that does not necessarily make you the owner by default under law. I think I've forgotten to cut down creation is not equal to ownership. So if you created something, you are not necessarily the owner. It depends in most circumstances. What were your circumstances when you were making it? If you are perhaps already working under the payroll of a production house, right? You're already working in their team. In that instance, what is important to understand is that you were already under the payroll of a production house. They were already paying you on a monthly basis or on a contractual basis, whatever the case may have been. They were already paying you to make that work versus something that you created. Also, important to understand, assume a situation where you were employed with a production house. Maybe you were a part of YRF's team, writers team, and then you're in office and you guys are you and a couple of other writers are working on a script. That is naturally, as we understand, they're already owning the IP. Versus a second scenario where you went back home and you came up with the idea for a script. Now, in this case, what do you think? Are you the owner of the script you made at home, but not the owner of the script you made at work? Or are you the owner of both the scripts? Or are you the owner of neither? Anybody wants to chip in? Okay, I'll tell you. So basically, because this script, the second script also was made during your course of employment, whether you made it at home and not specifically in the premises, there is a 99% chance that your agreement already accounts for any script that you make, even if not in your office premises, but during your employment. So the how it is covered in a bigger spectrum is that your agreement will most likely have the words anything created by you during the course of your employment. So even if when you're going home, you're still employed. So it is during the course of your employment, therefore, they own the IP. So ownership is at whose instance it is being created, who's paying for this to be done. It does not matter if you're sitting in their premises and doing it. So long as you're employed, it is their IP. If this is a work for hire contract from the very first day, you have no right. But if you have created this work independently, when you were not employed with someone, and not under anybody's payroll, whether as a contractor or as an employee. In that case, you are the owner of the copyright. In that case, you can decide how you want to exploit it. I think it's 4:50. We'll run through the next couple of slides a little bit quickly. Work for hire, we've already discussed. When you're working for hire for someone, you're going to have this in your agreement. It says that this work is being done as work for hire. Therefore, all rights in the said work shall at all times belong to the producer, normal language and contracts. However, it may be the case, rather rare, but it could also happen in certain exceptional cases, that you have the right to work as a joint author. Maybe you're not perhaps being hired, or maybe this engagement in question is by another writer. I'm taking writer's example because we're talking about IP in that context right now. So maybe you are a writer and another friend of yours has come to you to work together with you. They're saying that, okay, fine, I'll pay you. We'll work together on this script. So this will be a work of joint authorship. So he's not necessarily hiring you. This is a work for joint authorship. In that case, you may have rights in the script. Otherwise, 99% of the times when you're working with people, producers typically hire writers, lyricists, and composers for specific projects, and this hire is done as a work for hire. Producers versus creator conflict. There is often a natural conflict between creator, as in someone who's made the content, and the producer who finances and commercializes it. Because both sides contribute significantly, the question of author ownership becomes unclear. But often in this, basically, the law says, and Section 17 of your Copyright Act says, at whosoever's instance the work was made is the first owner of copyright, unless there is a contract to the contrary, or unless the parties have agreed to the contrary. So even if you did not per se sign an employment contract, or your contract did not specifically talk about assignment, your work was being made at the instance of your employer, that fact alone is enough to prove that they are the owner of the IP. Unless, of course, your agreement says that, okay, if you create something during the course of your employment, we are not retaining any IP, which is unlikely to happen. But unless if you are a creator, and we've discussed this already, if you're making this independently with no employment, with no person having to ask you to do it, you are the owner. But if it is done at somebody else's instance, they become the owner. Assignment versus license, a very common question, something that is very often asked by us by clients, that they're asking me to assign all rights versus should I license it to them. Simply speaking, assignment means you're just giving whatever rights you have away. आप उसे सेल बुलाओ, ट्रांसफर बुलाओ या assignment बुलाओ, they are mostly synonymous to each other. Versus license means you giving them a permission to use it for a while. So if you were giving your film to an OTT platform, you're a producer here, and an OTT is taking your film. So very simple example is, sometimes films are being made, they are very high budget. So perhaps Geo Studio steps in, becomes the studio partner. So what they do is they take all rights in the film. They pay everybody who's involved in the film. They take assignment of all rights from you and from everybody else in the project. They become the owner of IP. Versus most of us must have seen Friends. So sometimes Friends is available on Jio Hotstar. Sometimes Friends is leaving Jio Hotstar. Next day it's on Netflix. Sometimes it's on neither and you find it somewhere on Prime. But why is it? Because they have a license, a limited period of time for which each of these OTTs is being permitted to exploit the said content. So maybe they have a license deal for, say, 2 years with Netflix, which gets over, and around that time when this is expiring, Prime comes over, takes it for 1 year. And then around that is expiring, Netflix realizes I've lost so much revenue because I don't have Friends. They take it back. But why these sitcoms, they keep shuffling between OTTs. You start watching an old sitcom 6 episodes later, it's no longer on the same platform, then you have to see where it went. It went because it was being licensed to A and B and C. There was no assignments of right. So there's two instances. Assignment means आप completely पूरे ही rights assign कर देते हो. Sale and assignment में the only difference is in assignment you may retain a couple of rights with you. Maybe you retain the right to make a sequel or prequel or this or that, or you retain the right to receiving 20% profit from whatever is done after, like whatever the film makes. I'm giving you all rights in perpetuity, all IP, all everything. Take it. 20% you keep giving me for life. I'm assigning all rights to you. Sale means you everything goes. It's unlike assignment. Sale mein you don't retain 20, 30, 40, any percentage. Sale means it's all gone. So license gives, assignment gives you the option to retain something. It may also be zero retention. That also is an option. License, on the other hand, is limited permission, limited use, limited period. So license say else say always remember limited. So you can limit the time, the duration, and how it can be exploited. You can limit the territory that, okay, only I'm giving this to you for license. I'm licensing this to you for 3 years for 4 crore in total for Indian territory, nowhere else. I may, so now you've given it to someone in India for 4 years. That is sorted. Now maybe you can, with the same content, go to somebody in USA and license it there because you restricted your territory. So various restrictions are capable of being imposed in a license versus in assignment, you're just going to give it all away. OTT platforms, just a second. This is where things change. Again, I think throughout our discussion, we have been covering how OTT platforms affect your rights. In maybe 10 years ago, in fact, not even longer, 10 years ago, films were going to theaters for audience to conventionally see. And then there was perhaps after, say, a few months after the film was released, it was being displayed on Star or Sony or ZTV or something else, world premiere, first time on TV, right? But now I think apart from a couple of people from our generation and then some in our parents' generations, nobody is watching the mainstream television anymore. So everything is going to OTTs. Even uh, even production houses which had channels have now made OTT because that is the kind of consumption audience has come into. So the demand for exclusivity in this instance becomes important. Now, previously, and I think exclusivity was something that was an issue since the very beginning. Now, imagine if Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, for example, was premiering for the first time in on Set Max, right? But at the same time, that same 7 p.m. slot, Z was also able to stream it. Wouldn't that be a split in revenue? Why would Sony go ahead and pay at that time some lakhs or some crores to Dharma for seeking rights to broadcast this film when another channel would be doing it at the same time, therefore cutting viewership, therefore cutting revenues. That's still the game, just it's on the internet now. So OTTs demand exclusivity. So if one film is available on Netflix, you will hardly find that film on another OTT because exclusivity is important. And they, of course, unlike film distribution, in which you are just giving the distributor the theatrical release limited rights in the film, OTT platforms they naturally require much more extensive control. They may be promoting it, they may be bundling it, they may be showing it in the trending, the top this, that. So they require much more rights. And therefore, when you're just giving it to someone for theatrical distribution, the film, it would be an easier deal. It would require much lesser. You have theatrical distribution agreements for that or just distribution agreements. On the other hand, mostly when you're giving rights to an OTT, it's either of the two instances. Either you're assigning rights, which could be in perpetuity for 5 or 10 years, or you're selling it to them altogether, or third instances where you're licensing your film to them for 3, 4, 5 years. We've discussed licensing already. Deal structure, I'll just quickly run you through it. I think Yeah, it's already 5. So there's creation, writers, directors, composers, everybody comes together to create a film. It goes into production, producer finances it and completes the film. Once the film is completed, now what happens in an OTT deal? Now, if this was going for theatrical distribution, we'd have a arrow over here that for the film and for OTT, for theatrical, but it did not. It straight away went to various OTTs. Now, there's people within this production house who are talking to Netflix, Prime, Geo, and ZTV, and various other OTT platforms, seeing who can give them the best deal. Once that deal happens, there is an assignment of rights, after which the platform gains control. Now, platform will distribute it. They can decide how and where they're distributing, which countries they're giving it to. If they have further distribution rights, they may do so too. They will monetize from it. You can see Netflix is a subscription-based model. So are the others as well. Then you have different price ranges. Price ranges as in you want to watch it ad-free, you want to watch it with ads, or you want to go for the free version where you can see only 3 films on the entire channel. So that's how they monetize, through your subscription and the ads they put in between. And lastly, it kind of impacts creation. Now, one person, now see, we've reached level 5. Now, what happens is this creator, this writer, director got a one-time fee. He was paid by the producer. Producer then went into assignments of rights. He made a lot of profit. Maybe he gave the film for 50 crores. Netflix or Jio, whatever, they bought it. You got 5 lakhs, he sold it for 50 crores. Netflix now makes 100 crores. You're sitting on level 1 of creation and thinking, this film that I was a part of that did so much in terms of revenue and I got paid just 5 lakhs. So this is where IP came into play. You assigned your rights to the producer assigned it to the OTT went ahead and monetized it in n number of ways and made the money. So in this case, your rights and your capability to retain your rights is limited to the production stage, because if you think about it, a writer, a director, a lyricist, a composer is a part of a very bigger picture. Why this OTT structure slide is important is for us to understand that when, as creators, we create any kind of original content, there is a very, very big ecosystem consisting of millions of people, and we are perhaps a part of it. Now we need to understand which part we have come to play. Are we a part of the OTT platform? Are we a part of the production team, or are we perhaps the first people who created the things? Our limitation in terms of retaining rights can only be so far as we have a conversation with the producer that ab jab aap film mein, you're giving the film for distribution or assignment, you share a certain percentage with me. But once the producer is assigned rights, we do not get the entitlement to go to an OTT to ask for our share of money. It is important to understand that, how we studied food chain in earlier classes. This is how content travels from A to B to C to D. And it is hardly possible for us as a preliminary level on A to go to somebody in 0.5 and ask for money. Legal issues, royalty based. Now what happens is, now see, there is some kind of issues that would be more relevant to producers versus some that may not really be something that writers may be interested in. But I will again quickly walk you through royalty based earnings. If you're a producer and you've given your film directly to an OTT, now you're not the writer, director, DOP, you're actually a producer. You're giving a film to an OTT. If you're selling your rights completely, as we discussed, sale means you've given everything, it's done. Versus on level 2, if you are licensing it, you will be perhaps getting a lump sum money at the time of licensing, and then you retain some rights to, in one way or the other, monetize from the use of your film, wherever and however it is exploited. You may be able to gain some royalty. So whenever you're striking a deal with an OTT, first of all, identify what the deal is, what you're talking about. Are you licensing, assigning, or selling? Basis which of these transactions you are participating in, whether or not you can retain royalty can be discussed. credit and recognition, especially multiple creators are involved. Over here, that chain of title that we spoke about becomes extremely important. Very important to understand that if you wish and if you are actually the producer, always take agreements in writing from everybody involved in the project to ensure that such disputes do not arise. Sorry, I went to the chat box. Moral rights, as we spoke about earlier, is something you can ask for, but not something that you will necessarily be granted. And if you are working on a royalty-based earning system with an OTT in your transaction, then it is important for you over here to kind of ensure on your own behalf some kind of transparency model. When I say transparency model, I mean that perhaps annual or biannual auditing, you could ask the OTT concerned, you could ask them to produce before you reports of revenues, again, something to ask. So, I mean, these are issues we discuss when perhaps you are in the middle of a deal and you'd like to consult with a lawyer. We cannot get into much details of them during the webinar alone. I don't think judgments. Again, how can you as creators protect yourself? This is important. Instead of accepting standard agreements, or in fact, even taking standard agreements across to people to sign, it is very important that as creators, you try to make your agreements as curated as possible. It is absolutely not advised by lawyers, myself included, that you take a standard template that you downloaded off the internet for any kind of deal, because you need to understand those documents were not created just for you. They were perhaps created for you and 1,000 other people. And you don't know what the details of their deal was, and they do not know the details of your deal. And therefore, it is important that every single agreement, starting from an NDA itself, like, that's one of the most preliminary stage agreement, should be drafted and curated to your requirement. I highly discourage templates because they have more often than not landed clients in trouble. And actually, in today's time, AI, I have seen so many notices and replies that our clients send on a preliminary level to another person. They've received a notice, they want to reply, they do not want to engage a lawyer. So they'll just simply, go out there, ask ChatGPT to make a reply. Then, ChatGPT makes a reply and they send it across. And then there is another rejoinder that comes from the other part, and they're like, oh, we did not think about it. I had a couple of things in mind. ChatGPT wrote that down for me in the first instance. What do I do now? So whenever you are facing any kind of legal issues, I always recommend that you first consult with a lawyer, discuss this with a lawyer, and then get into drafting. So standard agreements are a big no, and AI-based agreements are also a big no. Responses based through AI also big no. Do not also consult them for legal consultation, because as lawyers, we hear this every second day about people using AI in courts and how it's lying about judgments that don't exist. Again, just something that's happening. Always negotiate royalty clauses where it is possible for you to negotiate. Now, negotiation as a technique is something that anybody and everybody has to follow when it is applicable to you. Sometimes you're going to be in a position where it is possible for you to negotiate royalty or perhaps a percentage share. Sometimes you are not. Identify the situation and then negotiate. Unreasonable, excessive negotiating for something that did not belong to you in the first place may lose you the deal. Ensuring proper credits, always ask for credits. While it's not enforceable, it's always something we can ask. And limiting how much ownership is transferred. So like I said, if you have the option, instead of assigning, one time lump sum big money may seem good, but perhaps if you try to license your content instead of assigning all rights from the very beginning, you may understand that it's not as bad. You can perhaps explore the potential of your content by licensing it to somebody for an year or two, understand monetarily what it is capable of doing, and then see if it is something that's making good money, then you can sell it to someone at a later stage. That's always an option. So there's that. And I think yeah, with that, we kind of come to the conclusion. I'm leaving this open for discussion. I think I can stop sharing the screen. Yeah. I'm sorry if I had to rush through the last part. I just wanted to ensure there was time for discussions if needed.
Yes, ma'am, no problem. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for that amazing session on content ownership and IP rights importance and how OTTs work, that structure, that flow was very, very helpful in order to understand all the industry practice better. So I'll just quickly open the chat box and we can have a short question and answer session. If any of you participants have any doubts in with regard to the session that ma'am just had, kindly put up your questions.
Absolutely.
We can quickly get over with the session since it's already 11 minutes past our session's time.
Yeah. Someone's
Mr.
asking if we get session recording. I think you can
Yes, ma'am.
answer
Yes, ma'am.
that.
Just take it. Yes, Mr. Sriram, this session will be available in Producer Bazaar's LinkedIn page as a recorded video. So we can always reach out to that to our page in LinkedIn, and you can view the session's recording for your reference. You can also connect with us in our LinkedIn platforms and our social media platforms to IP Climb in Instagram and LinkedIn to get the latest updates. And we'll also provide you with the links to our WhatsApp group, which is the Global Creators Community, to stay tuned to further sessions with in relation to media and entertainment law. Mainly.
If there are any questions that you have which you are not comfortable asking in front of the audience, I think I can be reached out on LinkedIn. And if not there, you can reach out to me on my email ID, which is media.law@Khurana Khurana. I will also type it out in the chat box for anybody who is who wants to consult at a later stage. Just a second. Yes. After writing a script, can we protect it? Yes, you can always register your script either with the SWA or with the copyright registrar. You can file for either of the registrations. SWA, although not a legislative body, but is one that is recognized by courts when it comes to infringement. So if your script is registered with SWA and somebody goes on to make a similar or copy your script, you can always provide evidence of a registered SWA script, which will be a good enough evidence. And alternatively, you can always go and register it with the Copyrights Act. I think I've also simultaneously answered Karthik's question. SWA registration is good. It is recognized. And copyright, if you go for that, that's good as well. I mean, it's not a problem if you go ahead and register a copyright, go ahead for a copyright as well. Now, YouTube channel, what measures are applicable to us? If you're owning a YouTube channel, your script, what content you are creating is all original. That is all copyrightable, and no moral rights cannot be sold. They are unlike economic rights. They don't have any economic factor attached to them, because moral rights, as I said, are just two things. Number one, your right to receive credit. You can't sell your credit to another person, and the right against distortion. That means nobody can spoil your work. That is again something you can't sell, right? And when you talk about selling moral rights, it would more likely be that you assign your right to somebody, you sold the script to somebody. Now, in that case, if that selling means that you are also agreeing in writing to them that I will also forfeit my right to receive credit. That is completely discretionary. There is no, you cannot sell it. You can forfeit your right, which is discretionary in nature. And so far as YouTube is concerned, what kind of reel you are making or any method of creating any content is not copyrightable. So that's not something you can seek, you can go to, like you see viral videos. Somebody makes one trend and then millions of people copy that, because that concept is not copyrightable. In general, how you have put yourself, a caption is something, if someone's copying, that's copyrightable. If you've come up with something new, a new work that is created by you, that is copyrightable, but concepts are not. similarly method of doing a thing is not. So yeah. We want a full bounded script for SW because after we need to change something, so we change the whole. See, this is something that you can always check in with the SWA. The point of registering a script with SWA is that you register that whole concept with them. If at a later stage you want to go and change your script, I'm sure there's provisions for changing, but that is something that you have to check in with SWA.
Yes, ma'am. I think we have answered the queries of our participants.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me and for the session.
Yes, ma'am. It's IP Client's pleasure in having you do this session. So,
Sorry. 1 second. There's one more thing. Is there any minimum duration of our film? I mean, if it's only for films, can we go with documentaries and short films? I don't understand the minimum duration of film. What do you mean by that?
ma'am, I believe they're talking about the duration of the film, ma'am. So, can they come and approach? Can they protect it even if it is a short film or if it is kind of a documentary? Or does it
Anything and
necessarily have to
everything.
be
If it's a
full feature film?
documentary, a short film, a full feature film, everything falls under cinematographic work. Even for that matter, videos that are short in duration are also cinematographic works.
There's another question from Mr. Kishore, ma'am. It says in SWA, how many
SWA,
cases
how
do we take to
many?
protect our scripts?
Again, as a lawyer, I do not register scripts in SWA. I do assist with copyright registrations. But I don't think copyright takes about 7-8 months. So I'm assuming SWA should be a slightly shorter duration. From what I understand from clients, say something to the tune of 2 to 4 months. They do also have to, like the copyright registrar, have to check if your script is conflicting with another person's script, if it's similar and all of that. They do go through the process. So you will have to check in for that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. So I'm I'm now sending the contact details of iClimb and ways to reach out to us regarding copyright or intellectual property related to media and entertainment
Absolutely.
in that box right now. So you all can always reach out to us, and then we can have a session on how you can protect your copyright services, be it related to the creator or the production house. So with that, we have come to the conclusion of our current session. So thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and for graciously having the session done. So I really hope that this session has provided greater clarity on copyright ownership in films and about the OTT content and how the OTT platform actually works in the industry practice. So I thank all the participants for your time, and we look forward in meeting all the participants and ma'am in future sessions. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everyone. I've typed in my email ID on the chat. It's media.law@khuranaandkhurana.com. If anybody wishes to reach out to me, I can be reached out on LinkedIn or through the email ID provided. Thank you so much for having me. Bye-bye. Good day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.